Welcome to the show. I'm Ryan McNeice, and we're here with Ty Brown. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, you bet.
And I appreciate you having us out. We're going to be chatting about your new book, Wandermere, The Legacy on the Little Spokane River. And you just published this not too long ago.
Yeah,
February. So the whole Wandermere concept and your family originating this was 1930.
Correct.
Right?
Great.
So several generations down now, what was the impetus and excitement on your part to say, I want to tell this story?
Well, it kind of started as just checking out my family's history, and I was doing some research. I teach history and English, and I'm interested in local history.
You're at West Valley High School.
West Valley High School,
okay.
yeah. So, and anyway, so I was researching basically the golf course. I knew they had some activities here prior to just being a golf course, skiing and skating and swimming, and I've heard all these stories growing up, and then I just started to do my research on those activities to learn a little bit more about it, not with the intention of writing a book, just for my own curiosity.
Your own personal interest, almost a genealogy type
scenario.
Pretty
much. Yeah, it was. It actually started with an ancestry, going through my family tree and learning some of that stuff. And then the more I researched it and the more I uncovered, the cooler the story became. And then I just started researching more and going down these rabbit holes of trying to find out more about this and more about that. And then I decided, well, I wonder what that was before it was Wandermere, back in the 1800s and early 1900s. And then that took me down this other road. And then
I love how you're describing that, because you're right, though. And I think you'd mentioned that at a time you found some almost a treasure trove of family pictures in black and whites.
Exactly.
That, as you said, you start looking at this, that leads you down this story. And oh my goodness, here's a whole nother story.
Right.
And it's so much more complex over the years than maybe you originally
that's the thing
thought.
about research. I mean, you think you know something about something, and then you kind of dig into it, and then it sparks your curiosity for something else. Then you talk to somebody and you learn something new, or you try to figure out if that's really true. And then I had the fortunate opportunity to, like you say, uncover boxes of papers and letters and negatives of basically this place being created.
Right.
And even before that, where my great-grandparents came from, and pictures from my grandparents when they were little and my parents when they were little, and then that just kind of strung the story together, and I basically built the book around those pictures.
Well, it's and I think you're talking about, as a history teacher in and of itself, it's solving that problem and putting the pieces together and finding the objective evidence, whether it be the pictures or I know we'd spoken at one time about how did the name even originate, and you discussed finding photographs and pictures back to Utah,
Salt Lake City. Yeah.
That's
one of the coolest things. People always say, "Oh, what did you learn that you didn't know before?" And there's a bunch of stuff.
Right.
But the name itself was the coolest one, because if you read in the book, you learn that there was another Wandermere resort, if you will, in Salt Lake City in the late 1800s, early 1900s that my great grandparents visited, and then before they even lived in Spokane. And I kind of pieced the story together that they basically enjoyed that while they were there, came to Spokane and tried to recreate that, which is exactly what they did.
Yeah, so in essence, they had an opportunity to be associated with or have a great experience with this other particular site or development, and thought, maybe we can bring it back here.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, as I said at the beginning, 1930 is when your great-grandparents purchased the property.
Right, exactly.
So from there, did they build the clubhouse at the very beginning? Give us a little bit about the construction aspect.
The first thing they did, they purchased it, and it was in the fall, late fall, and they started building the clubhouse right away. And it was a mild winter that winter, so they were able to basically construct the building all in itself. And then they basically just got to work with dredging the lake that's behind us. They drained it, dredged that down. It was really shallow at first, and they wanted to put swimming in and a diving tower. So when they used that dirt to sprinkle on the land behind us for the golf course, so that it was a multi-purpose use.
So
for doing
the actual dirt came right out of here and then was put down on.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. And there's a lot of newspaper articles that discuss the process of how they did this, and notes and journals that uncover all this information. But they built the clubhouse, and they built the lake, and they wanted to have skating, which is one of the first things they did too. Is they had ice skating that winter and hockey practices, and then in the summer they went into swimming and diving. They put in a dive tower. Then ultimately they built a bathhouse because the clubhouse itself wasn't really geared towards showers and recreating in it with swimming and skating. So they built a whole nother rather large building right about where we're sitting right now.
Well, that's what I understand is the clubhouse is down this way, but for the particular recreation that you're mentioning, the skating and the swimming. Not only isn't that where the swim tower?
Yeah, that platform out there was the diving tower. Yeah, exactly.
And then the structure, or as you said, kind of warming house, if you will, for skating was just about on the site.
Yeah, it was right here. Yeah, they had two buildings. They had one here, and that burned down about 6 or 7 years after they constructed it. That was pretty rudimentary. It was just like a building, like you say, a warming station with a fireplace.
That is in the book.
Yeah, there's pictures of that in the book.
What I found from talking to you before and having an opportunity to hear the story, but also reading the book, what I think you've done such a good job is those boxes, if you will, that you said you found of black and whites that tell the story. Not only do you weave the story in writing it from the 30s forward, but the pictures, the photographs.
Pictures say a lot, yeah.
They say a lot, and a lot of the things we'll be talking about today that you've already mentioned are depicted in those pictures, whether it be the swim tower, whether it be the warming house and the skating.
Right.
Later today, I'm excited. We'll get a chance. It's hard to see, but there was a ski hill, I believe.
Most people are fascinated by the ski hill, myself included.
So we'll get an opportunity to go down there and chat a little bit about that. But it's hard to believe that a ski hill at this elevation, at the magnitude, was there some 20,000?
Yeah, the first 1933, the first competition they had, there was upwards of 20,000 people that witnessed that.
I think that's
the largest sporting event at the time, ever held in Spokane, which is pretty cool.
Well, we'll chat a little bit more when we get a chance to go across the lake down here. So in the early 30s, when you had the fishing pond that I think was off to this angle over here, as well as the swimming, was it primarily, I guess it was running year-round?
Yeah, it was a year-round recreation opportunity. I mean, they advertised it that Spokane's only year-round recreation destination and so on in all their ads. And they really, like my mom tells me that my grandfather basically did anything he could to make a buck. And so he was always trying to invent, always trying to create something that people would be interested in to do outside recreation.
Right. Anything from a marketing standpoint or potential revenue source for the Wandermere development. Yeah. Wasn't one of the things he came up, was it ice and creating ice off the pond?
Well, actually, that was the original owner. That's why it was so shallow, the lake, to start with, because they would, before refrigeration, a guy named Francis H. Cook owned this originally. And he used it for fishing, and they had fishing in here. He had a fish hatchery, if you will, really. He started here. But then in the winter, they would take the ice and they would make it into blocks, and then they would have an ice storage bin that they would store this stuff in sawdust. Then with horse and buggy, they would take it into town and give it to people so they could keep their
different vendors around town.
Yeah, exactly.
Different world, which is why this is so fascinating, because we have the luxury today. We're sitting here and seeing this gorgeous development, but none of that was here back in the 30s, including the infrastructure that's around us here in terms of the highways.
That's the cool thing about Wandermere now, though. It's still a beautiful spot, but it's basically surrounded by urban development. Yeah, and it's accessible, but it's surrounded by urban sprawl, and it's nice that they kept it the golf course.
What stands out to you in the 30s and 40s? Great grandparents and grandparents, they're actually my understanding is they were living in the clubhouse.
Yeah. They've, even my mom and my uncle, they never really left. I mean, they still live on the golf course for the most part. My great grandparents, when they first built it, they lived on the South Hill, and unfortunately my great grandfather died just a few years after the purchase of this.
So early 30s.
Yeah, he died 35.
1935.
And so it was basically left up to his two sons, my great uncle Wes, and then his brother Bill, who was my grandfather, and they took the business over. So when my great grandfather died, my great grandmother, she moved here and she lived in the clubhouse, in the upstairs apartment in the clubhouse. And my grandfather and my uncle, they lived here on the golf course too. There's a couple other houses left over from the original owners. They lived in those houses, and then as time went on, they moved around the property a little bit in different locations. But then at one point, my mother and my uncle, with their parents, my grandparents, lived in the basement of the clubhouse, and my great grandmother lived in the upstairs of the clubhouse. And the main level of the clubhouse was where the business was being done, the restaurant and the lounge. And so you can imagine two families living in this building in basically a restaurant and lounge.
Right.
Yeah.
What stands out to you in the 30s, maybe even the 40s, as it's getting off the ground, so to speak? What stands out to you as interesting about maybe some of the opportunities or challenges that they were dealing with?
I know there was a lot of challenges. I mean, you're talking about the 1930s and the Great Depression, and they're trying to create this entertainment industry where basically people just don't have the money, to do these things during that time frame. And then another hardship I know that took place was when World War II broke out, because rations on gas and basically the business almost shut down during those years because it just wasn't, people weren't able to recreate like
well, you make a good point. You're coming off of the crash of 29, so the early 1930 when it's purchased, and then as the lead up to World War II in the late 30s, early 40s.
So, but it's a story of survival, really. Right. I mean, the more I read about it, and the more I learn about it, even today. I mean, golf courses, people think, oh, you own a golf course, you must, be rich or whatever. But in Spokane, you're only open for a few months, right? And so that's why in the early days, they basically did everything they could to make money year round.
Right. You can't golf, so you can skate or swim or fish.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, when they first started, I think there was more emphasis on the skating and the swimming and somewhat the skiing and the fishing than the golf. And as time evolved, people lost interest and had other interests, or the automobile or television, whatever it may be. People stopped recreating so much outside. Liability was a huge thing, people skating and swimming and getting hurt. And so it just it's like in the 70s, maybe the focus kind of shifted from those activities and just more on the golf course.
More to the golf.
Yeah.
Was it the 30s or the 40s that my understanding was the clubhouse? There was even a private club.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
That's an interesting story as well. That's one thing I didn't know a lot about, but basically what my family did was they leased that out to an organization called the Wandermere Club. And it was a private club, and they rented the clubhouse. Golf course was still open to the public for the most part. It was a short period there where it became private. But they did that for a couple reasons, and the main reason was for alcohol. So they could drink on Sundays, and they could drink hard alcohol in public. At the time, right after Prohibition, people were a little skittish about going back to where they were before Prohibition. And so they had these really strict liquor laws, and one of those was you could drink beer and wine, if I understand it, in a public facility, but you couldn't drink hard alcohol. But if you were a private club with memberships, they could store the liquor for you, and then you could partake in that alcohol in a public setting on the premises. Right.
Interesting.
So that's one reason. And then also the slot machines, the gambling. People could partake in gambling in the slot machines if it was a private club. And so basically in order to do that, they became private and leased it out, and that's what the Wandermere Club was all about.
In terms of dredging the lake and creating the actual golf course structure design in itself, was it a 9-hole golf course to begin with, or did they go 18?
Well, the stuff that I've read, they had every intention to make it an 18-hole golf course, and they even planned out the 18 holes and did a lot of the construction work for the 18 holes, but they just built the first 9, the front 9 that's still the front 9 today. They built that first. In 1931 is when they opened that, and they never did build the back 9. And I think it's basically because my great grandfather dying and issues with financing, whatever it may be, they just didn't get the back 9 built until 1948. So after World War II.
And I think it's the story that your mom, wasn't she the first female to tee off on the back 9?
The back 9, yeah. Actually, the first person to tee off on the front 9 in 31 was a female as well. They had the ladies tee off and then the men tee off. And then in 1948, it was her 6th birthday, my mom, August 1st, 1948.
And that picture's in here.
Yeah, it's a great picture.
It's a great picture.
Yeah. So she was lucky to be the one to tee off.
Yeah, and with your uncle on the tee box watching your mom tee off on the back 9. I think that's great.
And I always say, well, it was her birthday, so she was able to tee off. It was her day.
Yeah, ladies first. It's her birthday. Well, there's several stories around the course that are fascinating. As we indicated, the ski jump, we'll get a chance to walk over there. Additionally, as an attorney, one of the stories that I find fascinating is the reworking of the actual river.
Yeah.
From an ecology standpoint, environmental standpoint, it's just not something. It's unheard of today that somebody in a development would think that they're going to.
That was shocking to me when I figured it out. They actually relocated the Little Spokane River, and that was to do. The highway department did that to put the bridge in, which is now Wandermere Road, but it was the Highway 395 or the Deer Park Highway. And it meandered too much, so they straightened it out, and they basically moved the Little Spokane River.
But then it substantially changed that particular fairway.
So a lot happened during that when they did that. Yeah, we can talk about it when we go down there. Yeah.
Well, I think we take the golf carts and we go take a look over at the ski jump.
Sounds great.
Again, as we discussed, what I would encourage anybody to do when they get the book is most of the particular areas on the course that we're talking about, as well as the eras, if you will, the 30s, 40s, 50s of the activities that were going on. the pictures depict it so well. To see,
oh yeah, the pictures tell the story.
Well, just to see the outfits, if you will, of people swimming and skating, and it's all happening right here, and individuals diving off the high dive. I've talked to folks myself that remember jumping off the high dive or thinking that was
the thing to do, was to get there, to swim out. It doesn't look that far right now, but to get there as a kid, and then to get off the low dive tower, and then
make your way.
The big thing would be if you can get up on the top and dive off that thing, and then you really made it.
You've checked a box.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's interesting. Well, let's get in the golf carts and let's go around the course a little bit and take a look at some of these unique spots.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Ty.
All right. Yep.
Well, we're here on hole number 7 on the Wandermere Golf Course, and as we were talking about earlier, this happens to be up on our hillside here. It was a ski jump.
Right.
And what year was the idea to put the ski jump in?
Well, 1933 is the first competition they had. So in 32, it was actually the Spokane Ski Club. They didn't have the ski resort up to what they wanted at Mount Spokane yet. And so they approached my family and they said, hey, we want to host a ski jumping tournament at Wandermere. And
it's just hard to believe at this elevation.
Oh yeah, the elevation is the issue, but the positive things, I guess, was they had a lot of parking because they could park on the golf course. It was close to town, and they had a hill, so they were able to do that.
So the parking was over this way.
Yeah, so people parked basically all over the golf course at the time. Nowadays, it'd be kind of unheard of to park cars out there just because the emphasis is golf.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Back then it was it's frozen, so let's just park the cars out on the golf course.
Well, and given that we were talking about the elevation issue, tell us about the ability to get the snowpack for the actual ski jump.
Yeah, so 33, it was in January when they had this competition, and it was, of course, an unusually light snow year, which is hard to predict what it's going to be. And so they were fortunate enough that first year to kind of get snow from the area, like Deer Park, around the golf course in the shade areas. And they hand packed that stuff on the hill. So if you look at the old pictures, there's really no snow on the periphery.
That's
it's just
what I
like
love about the
one strip of snow, going up the hill. And so they had, there's time books and records of like 60, 70 guys that were, now who knows what they were paid, like $1 an hour or something, to pack the snow, hand pack the snow on the hill onto the straw.
And coming off those trains and the pictures.
Well, yeah, and so in 34, that was even worse because there was no snow in the whole area. But they'd already committed because it was such a success in 33. And so there's this great stories of them packing the Leavenworth Ski Club at Leavenworth out in the Cascades. They packed snow onto rail cars and then they trucked them over to Meade Station. And then they put it on from the rail cars onto the trucks, and then they would bring them over here, and then the same thing, the guys would hand pack it on to there. And that was a little less cost effective.
Right, yeah.
And so they didn't have another event for a few years after that because I think the first year was just so awesome and spectacular, and the second year it was still cool, but it was
a lot of effort, cost benefit.
A lot more, yeah. So it just kind of waned from there.
So how many total years did they do the ski hill?
They had 4 tournaments here, 33, 34, 38, and then 54 they had a commemorative run. And then in between though, from 33 until probably about into the 40s, into the war era, they had skiing though. People would ski on the hill, they had toboggan rides, they'd have a ski cabin that they built, like a warming shed, kind of like they did with the bathhouse. And so there was several years. You could join the Wandermere Ski Club. The Spokane Ski Club was then, off to Mount Spokane. They had their own place up there. And so my family said, well, let's just run our own operation, just like I was talking earlier, anything to make a buck. So they had the Wandermere Ski Club. And so they would have, ski lessons and skiing and the toboggan rides.
Well, I love the marketing material that you'll see in the book.
Yeah, it's cool.
So you mentioned toboggan and ski hill. So ski hill was here, toboggan.
Yeah, just to the right side of that, they'd have a long toboggan ride that would go out, and they'd basically just ride these things and get upwards of, 60, 70 miles an hour. And then they would end up in this flat area and just kind of come to a halt, out there. It sounds like fun. But they had an escalator too that was cool, like a motorized escalator that would take these people up to the top. And then in 1937 they put that in, and I think Mount Spokane did the same thing the same year. And those were some of the first escalators in the state of Washington.
How long do you think the escalator was still here?
Oh, that was in there probably into the 1950s.
Okay.
Yeah, 40s, 50s. And then after 54, when they did that last jump, I think it, pretty much, it just wasn't cost effective.
Well, and Ty, what I love about this part of the story is, you telling this story, you bringing these events to the Spokane area for generations that would have no idea if
Right.
you were walking on hole number 7 and looking off here to think that they had this level,
Skiing.
20,000 people here.
Oh yeah, not only that, the competition was, these were great
All over the
world-class
world.
jumpers, like Olympians that were
Yeah.
jumping here, and it was
Coming
just
to
looking
Wandermere.
through. Coming to Wandermere. The whole Northwest, though, really in the 30s, ski jumping was quite the thing, and you had these Norwegian guys coming in and working in the mines or the forests, and then they'd bring their culture with them, and part of that culture was ski jumping. And back then it was a really a big deal, and we just happened to be the right place at the right time for them to do it here. It's a really cool story. It
Well,
really is.
It's a great part of the Wandermere story. Appreciate you sharing that.
You bet.
Well, Ty, we're here on what was the 15th, now the 18th hole. So is this where the river was diverted from?
For the most part, the river basically came along this ridge right here and flowed across where we are now, and then it ran into this rock wall, this Darts Hill they refer to it as. And there was a big rock outcropping, which there still is, but of course that was blasted out and pushed back to make room for this road.
Significant blasting, though.
Exactly.
That rock area is
It's a major hill there, and all the area where the road is now is all filled in to get the elevation up to get across that bridge. So this at one time was a lot flatter than what it was in the old road that went into Dartford, went through here.
Well, and my understanding is at the beginning we were chatting about the original spring coming in, and this is a part of that.
Yeah, this is the spring here. So it's above ground at the entrance where you come into the golf course, and then it's below ground, and it's just all naturally spring water that goes into the Little Spokane River there. But there's so many springs out, around the whole golf course area and this whole river valley for the most part.
And is this the area again, it was the 15, now the 18, but is this the area that your grandpa was writing letters about?
Yeah, where basically it is, and it's still, it really is still kind of a wet area,
right?
Even today, they've got all these drainage ponds out here, and they've got culverts running into the creek there to try to soak up some of those spring waters and divert it off the ground. But for the most part, this is definitely the wettest spot on the golf course.
Well, it's certainly hard to believe that an actual entire creek was coming through this area, but as you indicated, via the highway department diverted it, and so what people see today is different than it was in 1953.
Oh, definitely, and it's actually, the hole is a lot more challenging, I would think, back then. Yeah. Because you'd have the river where your landing area would be off the tee. Now you hit over the water, right off the bat.
Oh, sure.
And then if you'd have to figure out, okay, am I going to lay up, or or am I going to go for it and try to get over the river? So I think it actually was probably a lot more challenging back then.
Yeah, I don't need to worry about it. There's no river right here. But
sure.
Well, this story, as we talked about earlier with the ski jump and the origins, whether we were talking about the skating or the swimming, there's so many different facets to your book. You're talking about 1930 forward, and I've certainly appreciated having the opportunity to chat with you about this.
It's been a fun project.
And the family history, but I would encourage folks to get an opportunity to get this book. What are the best options to purchase this book?
It is on Amazon, of course. And I like to support local. Auntie's Books has it downtown. The Ace Hardware here in the Wandermere area has carried it, and they've been real supportive of it. And Mel's Gift shop.
I'd imagine you've had some interesting conversations, maybe at Auntie's, or in terms of people coming up to you.
I think that's the best part of the process, not only the research and what I've uncovered and what I found out about my family's business, but just meeting the people that have shared in this or didn't even know anything about it. Because there's two camps. There's people that, I did that. I swam back there in the 50s or 60s, and I loved it, and it was great. And then there's the other side of, I had no idea that any of that even existed. So it's nice to have this out there for people to relive it or to experience it for the first time.
Well, you've done a great job.
We
appreciate it.
I appreciate
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.